The United States Border Patrol has exciting and rewarding career opportunities with the nation's largest law enforcement organization.
Earn great pay with outstanding federal benefits and up to $20,000 in recruitment incentives. Learn more online at cbp.gov/careers/USBP.
This is Climate Justice Y'all, a podcast dedicated to lifting up and centering the climate and environmental justice movement in the South. Despite the South being the most biodiverse, diverse, and one of the largest economic engines in the world, we are underfunded and often barred from the decision-making table. Because of that, we decided to pull up a chair and amplify the stories of communities in the South that are hit the hardest by the climate crisis.
We're using good old-fashioned storytelling to shine a spotlight on these Southern leaders from all walks of life, putting in their blood, sweat, and tears to transform the region. The usage of y'all in the title is on purpose. We are honoring our Southern heritage of creativity, resilience, and ingenuity. Climate justice, y'all. It's real, it's here, and it's about time y'all hear what we have to say.
Hey y'all, my name is Abigail Franks, and I am joined by the fabulous co-host Marisha Malcolm. As folks already know or have learned from previous episodes, when it comes to recovering from a disaster, it seems like the most vulnerable folks in a community are left behind. In fact, when Hurricane Ida struck the U.S. in 2022, the Houma Nation communities in the Bayous of Louisiana were one of the hardest hit areas. Yet when it came to recovering, they were essentially left to fend for themselves. Indigenous organizer Clarice Friloux and others show us that with the strength of community and remembering Indigenous wisdom, we can weather the storm.
Climate justice, y'all. It's real, it's here, and it's about time we listen to folks like Clarice Friloux. All right, let's get started with the show.
All right, if you could please introduce yourself, your organization, and where you're coming in from, Clarice.
I'm Clarice Friloux. I'm coming in from Grand Bois, Louisiana. About 10 miles south of Houma. I'm a citizen of the United Houma Nation, also a councilperson of the United Houma Nation's Tribal Council. I work for Taproot Earth, and I'm a senior advisor and also a regional organizer.
It's so nice to have you on the show or the episode with us, Clarice. So after reading about the Houma Nation on y'all's website, it's composed of folks with close ties to the water and the land. Can you please tell us a little bit more about that relationship and how it's seen today?
Yes, our communities have always been partial to the water. Our ancestors traveled by water. The tribe where we're settled at today is on the 5 bayous of Southeast Louisiana. But our tribe is 19,000 strong, and we represent all the way from Morgan City to Venice, Louisiana. So most of the coast is Houma Nation territory. So with that being said, our ancestors traveled by pirogue or small boats to reach these other fingers of the bayous, the 5 fingers. At that point, they had no roads, so that's their form of travel. And with erosion at this point, our bayous and communities are much further, but then also we have access by roads. But even though they look close, the communities look close, they're not very close. But by water, they were close for our ancestors. But water people. We live off the land and water. Most of our citizens are commercial fishermen, which means from each district or each area, they have different forms of commercial fishing. It could be shrimp, crab, oyster, fish. In general, that's how we've got most of our proteins from the water. And we also were farmers. So in the community I live in, it was a high ridge called Grand Bois, meaning big woods. And so with that being said, we were storm protectors for people living on the low-lying areas of the parishes of Terrebonne and Lafourche. My grandfather and grandmother had huge gardens. We would lease property. My grandfather would lease other properties besides the 28 acres of land that he owned. And that was to produce corn, okra, potatoes, beans. And so my grandmother was from a community of a bayou community, and her family would more or less barter seafood for the fresh vegetables. So she kept her way of life as a child into her married life. And so we were very lucky to have the produce and also the riches of the waters.
So with y'all both using the land and the water, and also being just frontline communities, of course, what threats have you seen or experienced, or even stories that you've heard as Houma Nation, especially with climate change?
Climate change is a big part of my life. I've seen the changes in my years, especially with the latest or the first Native American community to be relocated to a different part of our districts. So I've seen the disappearance of land, mass amounts of land, which taking those people off Algene Charles means that they no longer have the right to live there, but they can bring a boat and fish, but most of their boats stay in the water. So it's complicated to try to see how these people are going to survive being relocated. They took them out of saltwater areas and relocated them to freshwater, almost in the city. So it's going to be a difficult change for them. And then for me, I've noticed higher storm surges in our communities. And then with them building the Morganza to the Gulf, which is a levee system, makes it very difficult for water to go back where it came from. Usually the water rises, comes in quick, and leaves really quick. But with the levees and the floodgates, some communities are being trapped still with water until they open up the floodgates. The water has to go somewhere, so it could easily get closed in our communities, in which that leads to land loss, and also our trees lacking proper fresh water, and they staying in salt water.
Man, so it really sounds like, well, I think some folks don't realize that with climate change and with all this loss, a lot of folks like the Houma Nation and others, the culture is so deeply intertwined with the environment. Like there's not really, and so there's that loss there. And I don't know. I don't think people really consider that. And so I wanted to bring that up. And you talked about people being trapped with the water. Could you tell us about any recent experiences you have with disasters? I know that, for example, Hurricane Ida hit your community in 2022, and that was really huge. So how does your community, what are the recent experiences that you've had with disasters in particular?
Well, the first experience I had as a young woman of 19 years old was when Hurricane Ida hit, Juan hit the coast of Cocodrie, Louisiana. It came up Terrebonne Bay and it bounced around. So what it did, it pushed in water into the communities. So as long as it stayed offshore or in the waters, it kept pushing water forward to our lands in our neighborhoods. That was the first time ever that I'd seen my community have 3 and 4 feet of water. So after that event, it seemed like if a storm was headed to Texas, we knew automatically that we would have water in our yards for 2 and 3 weeks. And that when Hurricane Ida, the water came up really quick, which normally doesn't happen in my community, is the way that the storm hit us. It hit the neighboring community of Pontchartrain with heavy wind forces. And when the wind changed directions from the north, and after the eye passed, the wind changed to the north, and our water went down. But our people were used to having water come in and then water receding. But in the recent years, the years before that, we were inundated with floodwaters coming in and staying for 2 weeks sometimes. Hurricane Ida, like I said, hit us pretty hard. I think it was the hardest storm I've seen here as a resident of Grand Bois. And, like I said, we were at one point the safe spot for people living on the coastal bayous. And, my family would house people who were living very close to the Gulf. They would bring all their equipment or their livestock, whatever they needed to bring, to the hard lands where I live today. And now we're not much of a safe haven anymore due to erosion. And also, like I said earlier, the Morganza to the Gulf. When Ida hit, we stayed in our community. Well, we evacuated and came home. We were without water, we were without gas, and we were out of, we didn't have any electricity. I haven't seen the destruction of our trees. I remember reading Katrina, that didn't affect us as bad as Ida did. Ida hit us directly. So, and people don't realize that we are the buffer zone. We are the buffer to the city of Houma, the city of Thibodeau, and probably the city of New Orleans. So the Native American community is on the front lines when it comes to storms, because it's going to come out the Gulf and it's going to hit one of our Native communities. And usually we are the last ones to receive any assistance, and we are the last ones to get our service or our utilities back on because we're not very important to the cities. So it may take us sometimes a month to maybe 7 weeks without electricity and other necessities that we need. It's very seldom we get any other services like Red Cross come in. For Ida, for sure, Red Cross passed through our community back and forth every day, twice a day, to help a neighboring community, and then stop in our small community of Grenoble of 300 people. Wait,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me make sure I'm hearing everything correctly, because, this may be, I'll say you've told this story before, and but it really doesn't detract from how horrific that is. You're saying that Hurricane Ida was one of the worst storms that has hit your community, that you've lived there in your lifetime. And while the city and the state and others were recovering and checking in on neighboring communities, y'all were left to fend for yourself. Am I hearing that correctly?
Correctly. It's correct.
And good grief. And I'm also hearing that what's heartbreaking too, I think the water issues in particular are especially heartbreaking, considering how deeply water is entrenched and intertwined with your community. I think that's there. But so it used to be you have the water come in and y'all would have it come out, but now it just kind of stays. And now your electricity and water is cut off during storms. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, it's not cut off. It's usually...
Sorry, not cut off. It won't, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's not returned to service.
The power lines are down. And like I said, you have to remember we're the buffer zone. So when the storm's going to hit, it's these low-lying communities of Native American people who get hit first. So, and we're not that important, according to the state officials. We take the brunt of it, and then we're left behind to fend for ourselves for a good amount of time. So they'll put on the power, they'll get the poles back up in the city of Houma, which is 10 miles south of me, north of me. They'll have the power on there because they have businesses. In our small communities, we've lost a lot of supermarkets on our low-lying bayous. A couple of schools have closed because of the effect that we take from being the buffer zones or the barrier islands. And we no longer have barrier islands off of our coast. And so the next barrier would be the Native American communities living off the 5 bayous. So either way it goes, if the storm's coming head on to us or it's going to Texas, we catch the dirty side of the storm. And so with that being said, utility companies will not come into our communities first. We stayed 9 days without having running water. We stayed probably 2 months or 3 months, close to 3 months without electricity. And like I said, Red Cross came through my community to get to another community, not once stopped to see if we needed hot meals or any kind of meal. We were lucky enough to have friends in the New Orleans area who knew chefs that were sending hot food to two communities, our community of Grand Bois and also the Native American community of Pointe-à-Chien. We would meet them in certain spots and they'd have big trays of food, hot food for us every night. They would do it once a day, but at least we had a hot meal. So a nonprofit organization came into the community. We had a couple of them come in to assist with clearing the debris off the roads, out of our yards. And from there, they decided they was going to rebuild my little office space to make 3 little offices so we could do FEMA applications, FEMA appeals, and SBA process of the ISBA loan submissions. So my daughter, myself, and my sister, and my daughter-in-law, we were running on generator power, solar generator power, to be able to assist our people in the community to be able to apply for FEMA services. And you know, people often wonder why we rely on FEMA for services. It's because most of our people are commercial fishermen. They cannot afford the cost of insuring their homes. You know, and people gonna ask, well, why you're there? Why you still there? Why don't you leave? Well, it's in our DNA. This is where we're from. This is the only life we know, is to live on the bayous. And so it's hard to leave your home. We know how to deal with the storms. We usually let the water recede, we clean our houses, and we do our own work. We don't sit back for anybody to come and assist. Everybody helps each other, and that's how we recover every storm.
Wow, Clarice, that is such a sad story. At the end, I love that community really is the one that brings y'all together and brings the restoration. But it sucks that y'all don't even have state representation to even get the proper care that y'all need, the proper restoration efforts that y'all need for your community. I'm going to let Abigail jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I want to say that, like, y'all building a resiliency hub is so cool.
Right.
It inspired me to do that. Honestly, the governor came in and he sent the National Guardian to help us probably 15 days after the storm. And they brought in a fuel truck for us because it was almost 2 hours for us to find fuel away from our house to drive. They sent us ice, MREs, water, and then the governor's office, somebody at the governor's office set us up with generators for people who didn't have generators, gas tanks, and fans. I think we did 25 generators, 25 fans, extension cords, and gas cans to help us kind of be okay. Because luckily for me, we knew somebody who knew somebody in the governor's office that was able to assist. Other than that, I don't know what this community would have done. It would have been a real hardship not to have that, even though we had suffered for almost 2 weeks without. But all in all, what the people did, they shared the stuff that they had, their food that they had in the freezer before they went bad. So they would cook for the community and then share it. Whatever you had, you shared with your neighbors. Even when I was still evacuated, my next door neighbors lost their roof. The whole roof came off the house. And I told my neighbor's son, go to my pool deck. There's a freezer on there. Go get food out for the family. Because their electricity had been out for quite some time. And I just said, go, I know you're there. Go get what you need. Doesn't matter what you take. If you don't take it, it's going to spoil. It won't be any good. So just cook it. So that's what they were doing. They were cooking from each other's freezers, our freezers together. And so when it came time to rebuild my pool deck to make offices, we had volunteers from the community to come help my husband gut it. got the little place that I had. Of course, I had still a big hole in my kitchen roof. My French doors blew open, so my dining room was a disaster area. But what we did, we focused more or less on just covering our roof with tarp, get those office spaces together, and work to help other people get what they needed at the time.
So how long did this take for your community to, we say be restored after the storm, but I mean, I know that recovery is an ongoing process that lasts years, but how long did this take? And how long did it take?
Well, after the governor came in and meet with us. And, we were shocked that we had made enough noise for the governor to come with the FEMA officials, with Coast Guard and all these other high-ranking officials, and even some farmer politicians came in, and they were acting like, they had no idea this was going on. And the crazy part is it happens all the time. So once the governor left, I don't know if he sent word to the linemen to get our poles back up, but it took us maybe another month to have our electricity restored. The water was restored a week after the governor left. Restored. But, as we were sitting, my husband and I was sitting out on the porch, no electricity, just listening to the quietness of our community and thinking how we had pulled together and, and we were going to survive this. But there was a better way. There's another way we could do this. And I asked my husband to build me a replica of my great-grandmother's house that was built in the 1800s, and that my cousin Monique Verdin shows in her books and My Louisiana Love documentary. And I said, I would love to be able to build a replica of that house and use it as a healing and a safe house. So my husband is a carpenter. So he said, we can do that. And so we can be equipped to handle freezers, refrigerators, a charging station for people who need to recharge their phones, and just healing. Come and talk, sit with us, talk to us, and see what we can do to, when you're in that state of nothing going on, there's no traffic passing, there's no noise outside, it's just pitch black, and all you see is dim lights from your neighbors, you're able to focus on what's real. And it gives you a clear sense of that our ancestors were visitors. They would visit each other quite often, and because there was no other activities to do. And so we found ourselves doing the same thing that our ancestors did, and they call it a bayous. Like we were visiting each other, and so we knew what was going on in each other's spaces of who needed what and how and whatever else was. One person needed a front door or a window blew out, then we knew we'd get together and you'll fix whatever was needed. Or an elder needed the pins. So we would search out for things like that. So we was able to come together and find things we had in common and also help each other out in this difficult time.
So, Clarice, this episode is titled Ancestral and Indigenous Ecological Knowledge, and it focuses on the roles in climate adaptation amid worsening disasters. And I know that your community, based off the stories that you're sharing with us right now, your community experiences this and they even have knowledge about it. What insights can we draw, and how can we integrate this wisdom into present day community resilience? So how can we integrate some of the things that you all do and move them into other communities that are not just Indigenous?
For me, it's the feeling of not being selfish is one thing. And we were always taught to share and never take more than what you need. That's in my DNA. That's what we were taught as children growing up in Indigenous families, take only what you need, and whatever you have left over, share with other people. So for me, that means make sure that my neighbor's okay. Make sure that, we're taken care of, but you have to keep your mental health intact also. We all have meltdowns, especially during disasters. We all do. But as long as the other person can be strong, we can have a meltdown. Another person has to be strong enough to get us through our meltdowns. And to me, I do anything my neighbors need. I will make sure that that I'll find somebody. If I can't do it, I'll find somebody to help them. So we have to come together as one during a disaster. Forget about the hardships, other hardships. Forget about any issues that you've had, maybe a little argument. That's all behind us. You have to look forward. We're the only ones who are going to help each other survive at that point. So we depend on each other and we work together. So that makes it, easier for us. And people in my community know that my door is always open. My phone is always on. So whatever is needed, they're welcome to come here and we share whatever we have.
Wow, thank you. So to close this episode, first of all, thank you for everything. And thank you for leading us through this. I could spend all day asking more questions about the resiliency hubs, but in order to respect your time, I want to ask, since there's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially with, not only adapting to the disasters, but recovering from them as well, and also enduring the emotional labor that comes with it, this can be really draining. And so I say all that to say, please tell us what gives you hope. And if there's any information that you didn't get to today or you want to include in this episode, this is your time to shine.
In 1994, in 1994, I was faced with a decision to put myself out there in front of the media and fight one of the biggest oil and gas companies globally. And I was 28 years old. And I often wondered why I was doing this. And then I remembered that my great-grandfather took my grandfather to live here in Granbois in 1915 due to them being relocated from a major storm that hit Grand Isle, Golden Meadow. He moved us to this high tract of land, and this was going to be our safe spot. So with that being said, then I realized that I'm here for a reason. I'm in this little community for a reason. My great-grandfather could see it. I didn't feel it until 1994. So there's a reason that I'm here, and that's my hope. I'm here for a reason. I just may not know the whole reason yet, but we all have that purpose. And my purpose is to protect my land, my people, and my community.
The United States Border Patrol has exciting and rewarding career opportunities with the nation's largest law enforcement organization. Border Patrol agents enjoy great pay, outstanding federal benefits, and up to $20,000 in recruitment incentives. If you are looking for a way to serve something greater than yourself, consider the U.S. Border Patrol. Learn more online at cbp.gov/careers/USBP. That's cbp.gov/careers/USBP.
Are you concerned about equality, justice, and fair treatment for African Americans? Do you believe in a future where our communities are protected and not targeted by police? President Biden's administration is making some significant decisions, and we need your voice to be heard. President Biden is considering the ban of menthol cigarettes, which could have unintended consequences for African Americans. Instead of rushing into this decision, let's call President Biden at 202-456-1414. A ban on menthol cigarettes could lead to an underground market suicide and increased crime in our communities. Call President Biden at 202-456-1414 and demand that he halt the ban on menthol until there's a review of the investigative findings. Here is a better idea. Ask President Biden to invest in tobacco cessation programs in our communities to help addicted smokers live healthier lives. Call President Biden at 202-456-1414. Tell him to stop targeting African Americans with a ban on menthol. This message is paid for by Alliance for Fair and Equitable Policy.